Welcome to Mike X Apple, and I'm doing a different video this week. Normally I would do my Macintosh Mondays, but I'm gonna be honest, I was a little sick yesterday. Plus the news is pretty slow right now, so I figured we'd talk about something that was mentioned in last week's news video in the comments, and that was related to Apple switching to USB-C. Now the commenter pointed out that Apple never technically said that they would switch to USB-C. They said that they would comply with the EU, which is completely true. The language in the EU agreement actually says if the phone has a port, that it has to be USB-C. So Apple could technically go to just not having a port anymore, and they would technically be complying with the EU regulations. So I don't think I've ever fully addressed that in detail before, because I've always been under the assumption that Apple would just switch to USB-C, but I'm going to go over the reasons why I think that they will probably switch over to USB-C versus going portless. But it was a really good point, and I think it is something that's kind of fun to discuss. So today I'm just going to discuss why I think Apple will go USB-C instead of going to the fully portless iPhone. The first thing I want to talk about are the rumors. Now, rumors are nothing to hang your hat on. Obviously, they're subject to change. They're rumors. I mean, nothing's really confirmed, but usually when it's a big change to the iPhone, we'll start getting those rumors, and they're pretty accurate. Like, for instance, last year when they were getting rid of the notch with the 14 Pro. Now, all those rumors weren't accurate, but they ended up being pretty close to what ended up being the iPhone 14 Pro, especially as we got closer to launch. And right now, the only rumors related to the iPhone is the iPhone 15 is going to have USB-C. The 15 Pro is also going to have USB-C, but it's going to have the faster USB 3.0 transfer speeds, whereas the regular 15 is going to have USB 2.0 transfer speeds. That's the current rumor for the iPhone, is that next year's iPhone both are going to have USB-C. Now, USB-C has also been rumored before and has not come to fruition, so even me saying that doesn't mean that even next year's iPhone is going to have USB-C, but it seems like that's where the rumors are right now, that they're going to have USB-C. And they also did move the entry-level iPad recently to USB-C, and everything else in their line is USB-C, so to me it just makes more sense if they were planning to switch to USB-C. Second thing is, it would be a nightmare for serviceability. So I've worked support for various companies since 2014. The last thing you want to do is to have a user service their phone. Now, generally, the iPhones are pretty rock solid. Maybe a lot of you don't remember, but the older iPhones, you used to have to connect to a computer and set it up through iTunes. Or if you had a situation where you had to restore the phone, you used to have to do it through iTunes. And Apple has gotten away from that. They've slowly gotten to the point where the iPhone is a self-sufficient thing. The activation and restores happen on the phone most of the time. But there are scenarios, like if you really mess up your phone, like let's say if someone was doing something stupid like trying to jailbreak it and then they mess it up, or I don't know, your phone happens to crash in the middle of an update in a weird spot and you have to connect it to a computer to restore it, Apple would basically have to deal with that. You have to take it to an Apple store, you have to send it in for repair. So there's just more of a cost associated with that, like having to pay for shipping for the phone to and from the customer. Also, if there's no port for serviceability, especially if it's a software issue, that means that they would probably have to somewhat take that phone apart to even be able to service it, which is going to be more labor in their repair facilities just to fix a software issue. So from a financial standpoint, it might not make as much sense. Obviously, we don't have the data as to how often that happens anymore. I haven't had a bad crash in years where I've had to connect to a computer to restore it, but I have had that happen before in the past, and I'm sure it's still probably a part of their troubleshooting in some scenarios. So of course, Apple would have a better grasp of the data of how often that happens and determine if it would be worth it to go portless, but that is something to take into consideration. The next thing, and this kind of piggybacks off the last point, is data transfers. With these iPhone 14 Pro, or just the Pro iPhones in general, or the iPhone in general really, they've always been pushing video. And what happens when you record video on an iPhone, like I'm doing right now, I'm recording this on the 14 Pro in cinematic mode, you get these large video files, and the best way to transfer those files is still with a cable connected to a computer. Now, you do have options, like a lot of the time I personally save the file to my server directly on my phone. I just connected my server up through the Files app on the iPhone, and that's how I transfer files. There's also things like AirDrop, but generally speaking, these things are slower and less reliable than connecting a cable. I have used AirDrop on my Mac Mini a lot of the times to try to transfer large files, and sometimes it just fails, and it really sucks when you're transferring a large file and it's taking forever, and then it fails and you have to start over. So to have a phone that they want to push as a pro video tool and have you try to transfer stuff over Wi-Fi, it's not really going to work. And think about the person that's out in the field shooting. Maybe they have their laptop. It could be a Windows laptop, and they need to transfer some footage off of the phone that they're recording with because the memory is getting full or something like that. And the only option they're going to have in that scenario, if they don't have any internet to transfer it over Wi-Fi, would be to hook up a cable. So from the professional video standpoint, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, some people are crazy and they still prefer to do local backups of their iPhone. They rather connect to their computer and back it up that way, and they know that their data is there. Now, I've been using the iCloud backup almost exclusively, which is not always the best case, especially when there's a major update. It's always recommended to do a full backup to your computer. The iCloud backup's pretty good, but if you really want to make sure that all your data is going to be there, the best way to back it up is still by connecting it. Now, the data, of course, still can be transferred over Wi-Fi, but again, it's one of those things where if you have a large backup, that would take forever. Something happens where your phone disconnects from Wi-Fi, your router resets. It's a frustration of you having to start over again, especially with something that's crucial as a backup. I don't think we're 100% there with wireless yet to completely replace a cable for data transfer, especially when it comes to large files. Now, the next thing, of course, is CarPlay. Now, I'm going to be honest, my car is 6 years old, and the funny thing is the software in my car actually supported CarPlay, but the USB ports did not. So I went on Amazon and I got some USB ports and replace them in my car myself so I can have CarPlay. But the last thing I'm going to do for a car that I just paid off this year is buy a new car because my phone no longer has a port and I can't plug in to do CarPlay. Now, there are some third-party wireless options on the market, and of course, Apple could always make a wireless option for CarPlay, but realistically, if someone's buying a new phone and then they find out that they have to go and buy this additional dongle that's even more expensive just because they got a new phone, it's probably going to make them reconsider getting that new phone. So while a lot of newer cars do have wireless CarPlay, it is a fairly new feature, and a lot of people just don't buy new cars that often, where they don't want to buy a new car just because they got a new phone or have to go out and buy an expensive dongle just to use this feature that they could use with the cheap cable that was included in the box before. And the last thing is the headphone jack, which Apple has already killed before, but it is still alive in some cases because you still have the Lightning to 3.5 millimeter adapter, and obviously there are already USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapters to connect headphones. Now I know what you're thinking, like Apple has already proven that people would just move on and buy wireless headphones. And that is true, but there are still some use cases for the headphone jack. Of course, there are wired headphones. Some people want cheap headphones and they're willing to buy a dongle so they can use those wired headphones. Also, Apple introduced lossless music, and they recommend to get the best experience that you connect the DAC with wired headphones. You can't really do that if there's no headphone jack or no port on the phone at all. Right now, if you want to do lossless, that's going to be the best possible audio you can get is by connecting a DAC with some really high-end wired headphones. As good as wireless headphones can sound, they really haven't caught up to that wired headphone market as far as audio quality. They're still not there yet. Of course, the codecs will continue to improve, the latency will continue to improve, but they're just not fully there yet. The other thing is, going back to the pro video argument. If you want to do pro video, you need pro audio. So right now I'm using a wireless lav mic. This is the Comica Boom XU, but I have the receiver portion of this connected with my good old iPhone 7 Plus, the one that was included in the box, headphone to lightning adapter to plug in the receiver in for this microphone. So it'd be pretty difficult for Apple to market these phones for professional video users and you can't do pro audio on them because there's not a lot of good wireless solutions for good pro audio other than just recording on a different device and splicing it together and editing, which not everyone's going to want to do, especially if you're doing some more like vlog style videos or something like that. To be honest, I don't use the port 90% of the time, but the times where I do need it, I really do need it. Like in this scenario where I'm recording this video, it's a lot easier for me to just have this wireless audio solution and plug it directly into the phone, and I don't have to worry about syncing up audio in post. Also with CarPlay, I plug it in, it keeps my phone charged, and it just works, and I don't have to do any kind of upgrades, I don't have to spend any additional money to get wireless CarPlay. And with that being said, I don't think wireless technology has gotten good enough to replace all the things that a Lightning port or a USB port does. Now, of course, this is my opinion. Apple could literally pull a headphone jack and just remove the port and be like, get over it, this is what we're doing. But I don't think that they'll do that. But the way I see it, there are three possibilities that would make sense. One is they switch all their phones to USB-C. To me, this seems the most likely. It's the cheapest in the short term. They could, in the long term, still go portless once they iron out some of the other details. But in the short term, this makes the most sense considering the rest of their product lines are already USB-C. Option two is they get rid of the ports. They're like, too bad, so sad, we're not doing ports anymore. Get a wireless dongle, get a better wireless charger, buy a MagSafe if you don't like the fact that it slides around in your car. That's that's option two. And then option three, and this would probably be the most Apple thing to do, to be honest, would be the regular iPhone goes portless and the Pro has USB-C. They are going to make that argument that like the regular iPhone user doesn't really need a port. So they go portless on the regular iPhone, the Pro gets the port because they can justify and they need to hook up their DACs and their microphones and transfer their data all quickly and, you know, do their manual backups on their home servers, all the crazy Pro stuff that pros do. To be honest, the regular people who aren't pros, they're going to want the Pro because they're going to be like, I don't feel like having to buy a bunch of new stuff. I still want my cable. I want the cable that I can throw in my bag when I'm going traveling. I don't want to have to bring a bunch of wireless chargers with me, etc. And they're going to get the Pro just because. So option 3, I don't think Apple would do, but if they did it, it would be very Apple. That's the end of this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Apple will go portless? Do you think they will go USB-C port? Or do you think it'll be a combination of both, maybe portless on the regular iPhone and the Pro will still have a port? Again, let me know down in the comments below and have a great rest of your day. Peace out.